They say gardening is good for the soul, but nobody warned me that planting a few purple flowers would get me nearly arrested. My name's Marcus Bellamy. I'm a software engineer by trade, but when I'm not debugging a finicky backend or cursing at legacy code, you can find me outside in the dirt, coaxing life from soil like it's a personal rebellion against the cold sterility of my 9-to-5. To me, gardening isn't just a hobby, it's therapy, ritual, meditation. And when I finally moved into my dream house in a neighborhood called Willow Ridge Falls, I thought I'd finally found peace. That illusion lasted all of 3 weeks. Willow Ridge Falls looked like a Norman Rockwell painting filtered through a Pinterest board neatly trimmed lawns, white picket fences, neighbors who waved but didn't really talk. It wasn't perfect, but I figured I could grow into it. I had no idea I was stepping onto a battlefield disguised as a cul-de-sac. And the self-declared general of this HOA battleground? Mrs. Janice Pennington. Janice was the chairwoman of the neighborhood's beautification committee, a title she wielded like a saber. She dressed like a country club mannequin and walked with the confidence of someone who had memorized every line of the HOA bylaws and probably wrote a few herself. The first time she approached me, I was on my knees planting a line of salvia along the edge of my driveway, rich, velvety purple that shimmered in the sun. She stepped into my yard uninvited, clutching her reusable Starbucks cup like it was a gavel, and stared down at my flowers like I'd dug a pit of vipers. "Mr. Bellamy," she said, with a tight smile. "Those are quite vivid, aren't they?" I smiled genuinely. "They attract pollinators. And honestly, I think they're beautiful." She didn't smile back. "Willow Ridge prefers a more restrained palette. Muted pastels, whites, greenery, things that blend. Not shout." I chuckled, thinking she was joking. She wasn't. "We have an HOA," she said, adjusting her sunglasses. "And the committee does have standards. I'm sure you understand." What I understood was that I was being politely told to make my front yard look like everyone else's. But I'd read the bylaws. There was no specific rule about flower colors, just vague language about aesthetic cohesion. I figured if Janice wanted cohesion, she could buy a coloring book. I went back to planting. The next week, I got a letter. Cream envelope, embossed logo, heavy stock paper. It looked like a wedding invite, but felt more like a subpoena. The beautification committee found my salvia to be excessively bold and discordant with the neighborhood's visual harmony. I was given 7 days to remove them. I didn't. Instead, I took photos of every other yard in Willow Ridge Falls. Mr. Tran's blazing orange daylilies, the Blanchard's cherry red tulips, even Janice's own garden, which featured a neon pink lawn flamingo. No one seemed to notice. I submitted a formal appeal to the HOA. I showed up at the monthly board meeting armed with my research and my receipts. Janice was already there, sitting at the center of the folding table setup like it was her royal court. She looked smug. I made my case respectful, factual, reasonable. When I finished, there was a beat of silence. Then Janice sighed and said, "Mr. Bellamy, this isn't about specific examples. It's about maintaining a certain tone in our community." My appeal was denied. That's when things got personal. I started noticing Janice's SUV creeping past my house at odd hours. I'd catch her taking photos of my yard, sometimes pretending to check her phone. Then came the anonymous note typed and signed, slipped under my door. "Your garden is a disgrace. You don't belong here. Go back to where you came from." I tried to ignore it. I really did. But the final straw came one Saturday morning. I was in my yard, weeding, headphones in, just minding my business. That's when I saw the police cruiser. Officer climbs out, white guy, mid-50s, tight-lipped, arms crossed. Janice trailed behind him like a dog on a leash she thought she held. "Sir," he said, hand on his belt. "We've had a complaint about disturbances and non-compliance with HOA directives." "I'm gardening," I replied, wiping sweat from my brow. Janice stepped in. "He's being defiant. He refuses to adhere to community standards. He's creating an unsafe environment with his hostility." Hostile gardening. That's what they were accusing me of. I calmly pulled out my phone and began recording. The officer bristled. I didn't care. "Officer," I said, "with all due respect, this is my property. I'm not violating any laws. If Janice Pennington has a problem with flower colors, that's an HOA issue, not a police matter." Janice's voice pitched up. "He's provoking. He's challenging authority. People like him come in and think they can do whatever they want." She stopped when the officer gave her a sharp glance. He looked at me again and said, "Just try not to stir the pot, sir. You know how people are." I knew exactly how people were. That night, I decided I wasn't going to just sit back and be policed by pastel tyrants. I started Operation Bloom and Doom. I read every line of the HOA rules. I found loopholes. Turns out, there's no limit on the number of garden gnomes you can have as long as they're under 2 feet tall and made of approved materials. I bought 10 of the ugliest, gaudiest gnomes I could find and painted them in HOA-compliant pastel tones. Brenda Blush, Mint Madness, Off-White Oppression. I arranged them in elaborate scenes, tea parties, synchronized swimming. One even had a tiny protest sign. Muted is not a mood. Then I attended every HOA meeting. Sat quietly. Took notes. Asked questions. Can we review the vendor selection process for lawn services? Why did the beautification budget increase 30% last quarter? Janice squirmed. The mask began to crack. Next, I launched a blog, Willow Ridge Watchdog. Anonymous at first, but dripping with satire. I posted photos of HOA absurdities, sarcastic recaps of committee meetings, and side-by-side comparisons of Janice's alleged aesthetic crimes. People started talking. Quietly at first, then not so quietly. And just when Janice thought it couldn't get worse, well, it did. Because I found out her husband was using his county-issued vehicle to do grocery runs for her. Deliver garden supplies. Even pick up dry cleaning. I had timestamps. Photos. A statement from a neighbor who used to work in county admin. At the next HOA meeting, I brought the receipts. Publicly. Janice exploded. Called me a menace. Said I was trying to destroy the fabric of the community. "Mrs. Pennington," I said, "the only fabric I'm interested in is the burlap around your illegal flamingo." People laughed. Out loud. 2 weeks later, Janice resigned. Citing personal reasons. Her house went up for sale a month after that. And wouldn't you know it, their replacement on the beautification committee? Mr. Tran. Bright orange daylilies and all. Now my garden is thriving. My salvia are blooming like purple fireworks. The gnomes are still there, though I've scaled it back to just one. I call him Carl. He holds a sign that says, "Color is not a crime." And when I sip coffee on my porch in the morning and wave to my neighbors who now stop and chat, ask for gardening tips, compliment my zinnia's eye smile. Because I didn't just plant flowers. I planted roots. And nobody, no HOA, no pastel warlord, no badge-carrying spousey is going to dig them up without a fight. So what do y'all think? Was I right to fight back the way I did? Or should I have just gone with the beige flow? Drop a comment below, I want to hear your take. And hey, if you've got a neighborhood war story, tell me. Misery loves company, and I've got room in the garden for a few more tales. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and water your metaphorical salvia. Because vibrant resistance, my friends, is always in bloom.